Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopedana Bala Girivara Dari. Gopedana Bala Girivara Dari. Yasodanandan Bhadadana Ranjana. Yasodanandan Bhadadana Ranjana. Yamunatiyala Vanachari. Yamunatiyala Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Astatar Shada Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki. ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki. Jai Om Vishnupada Paramahamsa Parivrajakacharya Astatar Shada Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada Ki. Ananta Koti Vaishnavrinda Ki. Nam Acharya Shri Haridas Thakur Ki. Prem se Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sadi Gaur Bhakta Brinda Ki. Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki. Vrindavan Dham Ki. Navarit Mayapur Dham Ki. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki. Ganga Maya Ki. Ayun Maya Ki. Tulsi Devi Ki. Bhakti Devi Ki. Samaveda Bhakta Brinda Ki. Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shishi Guru and Gauranga. So I'm Krishna Kripa Das, disciple of Satsripa Das Goswami from Albany. And I was asked to give a lecture on Srimad Bhāgavatam today. So, we're on the third canto. Anybody remember what the third canto is called? No, the third canto. Okay. And you already told me the chapter. Actually, what's that? All right. We could do a Jai Radha Madhava quiz today. Does anybody want to say what the first line of Jai Radha Madhava means? Jai Radha Madhava, Kunja Bihari. Anybody want to give a translation? Come on. Yeah, he's enjoying in the kunjas, the groves of Vrindavan. Yamuna, kunja, Jai Madhava, kunja bihari. Kunja is the groves, and bihari means the enjoyer. Yeah, so he's enjoying in the groves. Gopi Jana Balaba Giri Varyadari. Somebody else want to give some insight into that one? So all of you Indian guys should know. Very good. What is it? Yeah, he's a lover of the gopis, yeah. Yeah, Dari. So Giri means hill, and Vara means the best. So Govardhan's the best of hills, and Dari means one who lifts. Yeah. Yashoda Nandana Brajajana Ranjana. Somebody else want to tell us about that? Right? Yeah, he's giving pleasure. Ranjana means he's giving pleasure to them. And the final one, Yamuna Tiravanachari. Yeah, but you already gave, it has to, I wanted to ask somebody else. I think you got it all right. So Yamuna Tiravanachari. He is wandering in the forest on the banks. Vana is forest, yeah. Yamuna is the river, Tira is the bank, Vana is the forest, and Chari means one who moves. There's Chara, the moving and non-moving living beings. So Chara means moving, yeah, so one who moves is a Chari. Like a Brahmachari, he moves in the spiritual element. That's why he's called Brahmachari. It doesn't mean just celibacy, it means somebody who's absorbed in the spiritual energy. So, I was given 2 verses to talk about today, 18 and 19. And 18 does have a purport, although it's small, so we'll just chant 18, is it there? Yeah, and we'll just talk a little bit about the purport, and then we'll go on to 19. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Yata Gandasya Bhumehe Cha Na Bhavaha Vatariketaha Apam Rasasya Cha Yata Tata Budhe Parasya Cha Yata Gandasya Bhumeshcha Nabhavo Vyatarekataha Apam Rasasya Cha Yata Tata Budhe Parasya Cha Yata Gandasya Bhumeshcha Nabhavo Vyatarekataha Apam Rasasya Cha Yata Tata Budhe Parasya Cha Yata Gandasya Bhumeshcha Nabhavo Vyatarekataha Abham Rasasya Cha Yata Tata Budhe Parasya Cha. Please chant. Taganasya Bhumescha Nabhavo Vyatarekataha Abham Rasasya Cha Yata Budhe Parasya Cha Taganasya Bhumescha Abham Rasasya Cha Yata Budhe Parasya Cha Taganasya Bhumescha Taganasya bhumescha bhava vyatarekataha brahmasasya chayata tabure parasya cha Taganasya bhumescha bhava vyatarekataha brahmasasya chayata tabure parasya cha. Ladies? Taganasya bhumescha bhava vyatarekataha brahmasasya chayata tabure parasya cha. Taganasya bhumescha rekataha tabure parasya cha. Taganasya bhumescha rekataha So we'll go through the synonyms. Yata as, Gandasya of aroma, Bhumehi of earth, Cha and, Na no, Bhavaha existence, Vyacharekataha separate, Apam of water, Rasasya of taste, Cha and, Yata as, Tata so, Budhe of intelligence, Parasya of consciousness, spirit, Cha and. Translation: as there's no separate existence of the earth and its aroma, or water and its taste, there cannot be any separate existence of intelligence and consciousness. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. The example is given here that anything material has an aroma. The flower, the earth, everything has an aroma. If the aroma is separated from the matter cannot be identified. If there's no taste to water, the water has no meaning. If there's no heat in the fire has no meaning. Similarly, when there's a want of intelligence, spirit has no meaning. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshunlitamena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharini Nirvasesha Shunivadi Pastatya Adeshtami Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Sri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktivinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Panchakalpatubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. So there's an analogy here comparing earth and its aroma, water and its taste with spirit and consciousness. So we just heard the previous chapter talks about how all the different material elements, they have a distinguishing feature. And this starts out by mentioning the distinguishing feature of earth, which is its aroma. So anything that has an aroma it has some earth mixed in with it. Otherwise it wouldn't have aroma. Like sometimes like smoke, for example, has some particles of carbon mixed in because air itself has no aroma. And similarly, pure water has no aroma, but when water is mixed with some material elements, it has some aroma, sometimes good and sometimes bad. And the aroma is the distinguishing feature of the earth, and the taste is the distinguishing feature of the water. And fire, form is the distinguishing feature of fire, and touch is the distinguishing feature of air, and sound is the distinguishing feature of ether. And it's described, as we heard in the previous chapter, these elements are manifest one after another. So you start out with ether and sound, and then the sensation of touch is added, and then you get air. And then to air, the conception of form is added, and you get fire. And then to fire, the quality of taste is added, and you get water. And water, the quality of aroma is added, and you get earth. And that at the end of the cosmic manifestation, everything is reversed. The earth loses its aroma and merges into the water, and the water loses its taste and merges into the fire. The fire loses its form and merges into the air loses its touch and merges into the ether. And the ether merges into the mode of false ego and the mode of ignorance. And the mode of ignorance and passion and goodness merge back into the Mahatattva, and the Mahatattva merges back into the Pradhan, and the Pradhan is eternally existing, because the material energy of the Lord is eternally existing, although it's sometimes manifest and sometimes not manifest. So the analogy is that spirit also has its has this distinguishing feature, and that is intelligence. So when we see intelligence existing, that means there's some consciousness behind it. That's one of the arguments of the intelligent design people. When you look around in the world, you see evidence of intelligent, intelligent design. So they conclude there must be an intelligent designer. There must be a spirit, a conscious entity who's manifested this intelligent design. And there's actually an interesting book by some Hungarian devotee scientists called Nature's IQ. And it talks about different kinds of features that different plants and animals have that are hard to explain in terms of evolution, because they're just so complicated that they couldn't have possibly arisen. One of the ones that was striking to me was there's this particular bird, and it builds an incubator for its eggs, right? And I think the eggs stay there for like 9 months, some incredibly long period of time, and the temperature of the thing ranges in 1 degree Celsius, higher or lower, during the entire 9 months, whereas the outside temperature is ranging over like 40 degrees, and it has some rotting vegetable matter in the bottom that's heating it up, and then there's leaves on top that allow the sunlight to come in or not, and somehow and the bird has a thermometer in its beak so it can measure the thing. It's like incredibly complicated, and the little birds know how to build these things without having seen their parents build them, So like, how do you explain that thing to like doing evolution? Like somebody really incredibly intelligent designed something like that, and inspires from within these birds to do it without having ever seen it done. So intelligence is evidence that there's consciousness behind it, and that's the point that's made in this verse. And there's a much longer purport for the next one, so we'll go on and talk about that. I'll just read the Sanskrit myself. Akarta karma bandoyam purushasya yadashraya guneshu satsu prakrite kaivalyam tesvatakatam. Hence, even though he is the passive performer of all activities, how can there be freedom from the soul as long as material nature acts on him and binds him? Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Although the living entity desires freedom from the contamination of matter, he is not given release. Actually, as soon as a living entity puts himself under the control of the modes of material nature, his acts are influenced by the qualities of material nature, and he becomes passive. It is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita, Prakrite Kriyamanani Gunai. That's 327. The living entity acts according to the qualities or modes of material nature. He falsely thinks that he is acting, but unfortunately he is passive. In other words, he has no opportunity to get out of the control of material nature because it has already conditioned him. The Bhagavad Gita has also said that it's very difficult to get out of the clutches of material nature. One may try in different ways to think that everything is void in the ultimate issue, that there is no God, and even if the background of everything is spirit, it is impersonal. This speculation may go on, but actually it's very difficult to get out of the clutches of material nature. Devahuti poses the question that although one may speculate in many ways, where is the liberation as long as one is under the spell of material nature? The answer is found in Bhagavad Gita 7:14. Only one who has surrendered himself under the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord Krishna, Mam eva ye prapadyante, can be free from the clutches of Maya. Since Devahuti is gradually coming to the point of surrender, her questions are very intelligent. How can one be liberated? How can one be in a pure state of spiritual existence as long as he's strongly held by the modes of material nature? This is also an indication to the false meditator. There are many so-called meditators who think, I am the supreme spirit soul. I am conducting the activities of material nature. Under my direction, the sun is moving and the moon is rising. They think that by such contemplation or meditation, they can become free. But it is seen that just 3 minutes after finishing such nonsensical meditation, they are immediately captured by the modes of material nature. Immediately after his highest-sounding meditation, a meditator becomes thirsty and wants to smoke or drink. He's under the strong grip of material nature, yet he thinks he's already free from the clutches of Maya. This question of Devahutis is for such a person who falsely claims that he is everything, that ultimately everything is void, and that there are no sinful or pious activities. These are all atheistic inventions. Actually, unless a living entity surrenders under the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as instructed in Bhagavad Gita, there is no liberation or freedom from the clutches of Maya. So Srila Prabhupada makes several points there. And he quotes that verse, Bhagavad Gita, or part of it, 3:27. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai kamani sabasha hankara vimudatma kartam iti manyate. How that actually everything's being performed by the material nature, but I think I'm doing this, I think I'm doing that. And because I think I've done all these things, I think I'm a really great guy because I did this, and I did this, I did all these things. Just see how great, just see my prowess, you know? But actually, all we can really do is desire. We're at 1/10,000th the tip of a hair, seated, buried in the middle of this body somewhere, in the region of the heart. We actually have no control to do anything with the material nature. All we can do is desire, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is in control of the material nature, moves the material nature in accordance with our desire and our karma, And because there looks like there's some relationship between our desire and what's happening, we conclude that we're actually doing it. When it's actually the Lord who's moving the material nature. There's a verse in the Gita, actually a pair of verses that talk about the situation of the spirit. It's in the 5th chapter, verses 8 and 9. A person in the divine consciousness, although engaged in hearing, seeing, touching, smelling, eating, moving about, sleeping and breathing, always knows within himself that he actually does nothing at all. Because while speaking, evacuating, receiving or opening or closing the eyes, he always knows that only the material senses are engaged with their objects and he is aloof from them. So we're actually not our body, we're just residing in this body, and Krishna is actually moving the body for us. And sometimes when we're paralyzed, we realize that we're actually not in control of the body. We have the stroke and suddenly we can't do something with half our body. We realize that actually we weren't in complete control of the body after all. Now, another interesting point Prabhupada makes as he talks about these people who imagine that they're the Supreme Soul and that they're causing the sun to rise or like that. It reminded me of there was one devotee in Alachua named Mother Janava. She was saying that before that she met the devotees, she would like go up on this mountain before sunrise, and she would actually meditate on making the sunrise, you know. And so then when she met the devotees and she heard Prabhupada expose this, she realized that actually she was completely foolish. So, so Prabhupada talks about people who think that they're liberated by the strength of their meditation, but actually aren't. And it reminds me of a nice verse that's often quoted in this connection from the prayers of the demigods to Lord Krishna in the womb. O lotus-eyed Lord, although non-devotees who accept severe austerities and penances to achieve the highest position may think themselves liberated, their intelligence is impure. They fall down from their position of imagined superiority because they have no regard for your lotus feet. And then another point Prabhupada makes is that these people who, by their meditation, claim to become liberated, after their little meditation, they showed that they're actually addicted to all kinds of bodily activities, like smoking and drinking and stuff, and that they're really very much absorbed in the material nature, actually absorbed in the mode of ignorance, which is the lowest mode of material nature. At the same time, they're imagining in their mind that they're liberated, which makes sense because illusion is also another feature of the mode of ignorance. So people who are intoxicated are also likely to be illusioned because it's just another manifestation of the mode of ignorance. So the main point is that unless a living entity surrenders under the Supreme Personality of Godhead as instructed in the Bhagavad Gita, there's no liberation or freedom from the clutches of Maya. Actually, at the end of the 16th chapter of the Divine and Demoniac Nature, Krishna says, Yashastram vidam utsraja vartate kamakarta nasasidam avapnoti na sukham na paramgatim. The one who disregards the scriptural injunctions and acts according to his own imagination, he doesn't attain perfection, he doesn't attain happiness, and he doesn't attain the supreme destination. So, in the beginning of the 17th chapter, Arjuna asks, well, what about these people who don't follow the scripture? Are they in the mode of passion? Are they in the mode of goodness? Are they in the mode of ignorance? What's the story? And basically, Krishna says, according to the modes of material nature, they may be in goodness, passion, or ignorance. And then he gives the symptoms of, he starts out talking about eating. People eat food that increases the duration of life, that's pleasing, satisfying, sustaining, tasty. It's in the mode of goodness. Those who eat things that are too hot and burning, pungent, dry, they make the body sick, basically, are in the mode of passion. Those who eat food that's rotting and smells bad, they're in the mode of ignorance. And he goes on describing people conditioned by the different modes of material nature. So when we act according to our imagination, because our mind is conditioned by the modes of material nature, we act materially. But if we decide to stop listening to our mind and act according to Krishna's directions in Bhagavad Gita, because Krishna's directions are transcendental, we actually begin to transcend the influence of the material nature. Like, for example, we may be lying in bed and it's time for Mangala Arati, and because we are submissive to our Guru Maharaj, we get out of bed and we go and see the deities, instead of remaining in bed, absorbed in the mode of ignorance. So how did we transcend that? By our submission to our Guru Maharaj, who is a representative of Krishna. So the devotee is the only one who actually knows Krishna, because as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, I'm explaining this to you because you're my devotee and my friend. Because of that, you can understand this mystery. So the devotees are the only people who can understand the mystery of Bhagavad Gita, and therefore we have to take shelter of a devotee as a spiritual master, and by following the instructions of the Guru, who's transcendently situated because of following his own Guru's instructions, which ultimately go all the way back to Krishna, then we can actually transcend the influence of material nature, because we're not acting according to our own imagination anymore. We're acting according to Krishna's transcendental instructions, or the Guru's transcendental instructions. And therefore, we're on the transcendental plane. There's a very amazing verse in the Chaitanya Charitamrita where Lord Chaitanya says that as soon as someone accepts initiation by a bona fide spiritual master, I think that his body is as good as mine, which is amazing. That is as good as the Sat Chidananda body of Lord Chaitanya, because when we start acting according to the Guru's direction, we're no longer acting under the modes of material nature. We're acting under the divine influence of the spiritual energy. There's a verse that goes, Mahatmanas tumam parta daivam prakritam asrita prajantyanana manaso gatva bhutadim avivam. The Mahatmas, because they know Krishna to be the Supreme Lord of everything, they come under the shelter of the divine nature, Radharani. They're not under the control of Durga. Sometimes people they complain about being controlled by women. Have you ever heard of anybody complain about being? But our constitutional position is we're always controlled by women. We're either controlled by Durga or we're controlled by Radharani. And it's our choice. It's our choice. If we reject the advice of Krishna in Bhagavad Gita, we become controlled by Durga. And if we accept it, we become controlled by Radharani. So Radharani is much better master. Durga has a trident with 3 prongs, the threefold miseries, giving us trouble, reminding us that we should be surrendering to Krishna. And Radharani is giving us 9 different kinds of ecstatic devotional engagements in the service of the Lord. So Prabhupada quotes the main verse about surrendering to Krishna, 7:14. Daiviyesha gunamayi mama maya dharachya mam evige prapadyante tam tarantite. And the other big one about transcending the modes by surrendering to Krishna is in the 14th chapter, 26 Mamchayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sugunan samatitatan brahmabhuya kalpate. One who engages in full devotional service, unfailing in all circumstances, at once transcends the modes of material nature, and thus comes to the level of Brahman. So, what's it? What do those kind of people look like? Is described. How to identify these transcendental souls. One characteristic Krishna gives in the Bhagavad Gita is in 255. O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of desires for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, he is said to be in transcendental consciousness. And elsewhere in the Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna asks Krishna, he asks him, let's see, how's it go? Kalingaschin gunane tan, what are the symptoms of one who's transcendental? Kimachar, what's he do? What's his character? And how does he transcend the modes? And so then Krishna explains, he speaks 4 verses describing the transcendental situation. He who does not hate illumination, attachment, and delusion when they are present, or long for them when they disappear. Okay, so there's the 3 modes of material nature. So illumination is compared to goodness, attachment is compared to passion, and delusion is compared to ignorance. So Krishna says, those who do not hate illumination, attachment, or delusion when they're present, or long for them when they disappear, who's unwavering and undisturbed through all these reactions of the material qualities, remaining neutral and transcendental, knowing that the modes alone are active, who is situated in the self and regards alike happiness and distress, who looks upon a lump of earth, a stone, and a piece of gold with an equal eye, who is equal toward the desirable and the undesirable. Actually, we have a lot of opportunity in the subway stations to practice equality toward the desirable and the undesirable, right? Because we always run into some undesirable thing, undesirable people, or some undesirable situations. Who is steadily situated equally well in praise and blame, honor and dishonor, who treats alike both friend and enemy, and who's renounced all material activities. Such a person is said to have transcended the modes of material nature. There's another one from the nectar of devotion. Iha yasya harer dasye karmana manasagira nikolas papyadvasta sujilan mukta suchite. One who is engaged fully with body, mind, and speech in the service of the Lord is liberated even within this body, despite his condition. So you can actually be in this world and be completely liberated if your body and mind and speech are engaged in the service of the Lord. Or even if that is your only aspiration and somehow or other, due to circumstances, you can't do it. If that's your only goal, you're also liberated. So basically this Maya is cheating us out of an eternal life of transcendental happiness by promising all kinds of sense gratification that'll make us happy. And it's sort of like a scam. Sometimes things are advertised to be greater than they are, and then you get them and you're disappointed. Well, that's Maya's program. She's always advertising the material world to be something really wonderful, and it never lives up to your expectation of it. And even if it does, the thing wears out. It comes to an end. I actually have a waist pouch, and it has a lifetime guarantee. So I'm on the 3rd one, But when you return them, you have to pay for the shipping, so you do end up losing money every time you return it. But there's nothing that's has a lifetime guarantee in the material world. So So nobody likes to get cheated. So if we can explain to people how they're being cheated by Maya, then they may actually develop an interest in Krishna consciousness. That's one strategy. So we encourage people to take shelter of a bona fide guru and follow his instructions carefully, and thus transcend the influence of the material nature. And we will end here. I haven't come to the end of our notes. 16 minutes before 9. Does anybody have any questions, comments, or about the verse, the purport, or my attempt to say something about it? Any people aspiring to transcend the material nature, or who have already transcended, who wants to share their experience with us?
Hare Krishna. I don't have the experience of transcending material modes yet, but I do have a question. It's about the first or the previous verse, and it says that there cannot be any separate existence of intelligence and consciousness. And I was just thinking, like, sometimes people go into a coma, or they don't have any kind of like functioning of the mind or an ability to choose. So how do you understand that intelligence and consciousness can't be separate, but then sometimes you see that people don't have like intelligent choice?
Yeah. Well, it's basically our spiritual existence can be covered by the material energy. So, so basically there's intelligence in the mode of goodness, intelligence in the mode of passion, and intelligence in the mode of goodness. So it can be practically completely covered. There's different features of intelligence which I didn't happen to mention, which I neglected to copy and paste. But it's basically there's doubt, there's misapprehension, correct apprehension, memory, and sleep, which are features of intelligence. So I would say that the intelligence is there, but it's covered. It's like intelligence in the mode of darkness or sleep, which but it's not there. And when the soul leaves that body and takes on another body, it will manifest its intelligence again in the future. It's interesting there, because there's really there's two kinds of intelligence. There's material intelligence and spiritual intelligence, and the soul itself always has spiritual intelligence, but it's covered in the material world. And then there's the intelligence, which is one of the 24 material items, which is part of the subtle body and which goes with you when you go on to the next body. And it doesn't really say here which intelligence is being referred to in the verse. But there's always intelligence. The soul has its own intelligence and its own mind and its own spiritual body. So in the spiritual world, we manifest our spiritual body, mind, and intelligence. So that's there, even though when we're conditioned, we can be in different states of covering. Like we can be seriously covered in the mode of ignorance, as in the coma. Anything else? Yes, sir. Param Brahma.
Even in the same body, when a person is awake, when he sleep, when he is in deep sleep.
Right.
So that's how the ignorance also stands. Someone is doing very, heavy sinful activity. So if you try to preach him, it takes ages and ages, you're just
Right.
knocking the door and there's nothing going in there. And someone who's fit awake, he can easily grab the knowledge. And the person who is in the middle, it takes a bit of time, hard work, but he or she picks up very easily. So it is just the stages of those
So it would be
consciousness.
intelligence in the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance, I
It
guess.
does, but it's talking about the stages where the ignorance stands due to false ego. It was just saying that 2-3 shlokas back.
Let's see here. Is it in the purport that that's talked about, or in the verse? Let's see. I don't really see it so much in the verse. The self-realized soul is thus reflected first in the threefold ego, and then in the body, senses, and mind. Although the devotee appears to be merged in the five elements, the objects of material enjoyment, the material senses, material mind, and intelligence, he is said to be awake and freed from false ego. And then the living entity can vividly feel his existence as a seer, but because of the disappearance of the ego during the state of deep sleep, he falsely takes himself to be lost, like a man who's lost his fortune feels distressed, thinking himself to be lost. When by mature understanding he can realize his individuality, then the situation he accepts under false ego becomes manifest to him. So I think that's more in the purport. Oh, okay. Consciousness acts in 3 stages under the material conception of life. When we are awake, consciousness acts in a particular way. When we're asleep, acts in a different way. And when we're in deep sleep, consciousness acts in another way. To become Krishna conscious, one has to be transcendental to these 3 stages of consciousness. And they're often explained in terms of the modes of material nature, like wakefulness is compared to goodness, and dreaming is compared to passion, and deep sleep is compared to ignorance. And then Krishna consciousness, one understands that he is the eternal servant of Krishna and is prepared to render service to Krishna in any state. Like when Prabhupada woke up, he was right there. He wasn't like, pulling back this ignorance covering. He was, he was just, right on top. It wasn't like covered over by layers of ignorance or layers of dreams. So there is a transcendental consciousness beyond that where we always remember our spiritual identity. And the more we think of Krishna, the more we transcend the modes of material nature, because in addition to engaging our body in the devotional service of the Lord, we also have to engage our mind. And because in theory you could physically engage your body in devotional activities, but your mind could be engaged in goodness, passion, or ignorance, or a combination. But just described in connection with Arjuna, he was known as Gudakesh, one who conquered sleep. And Prabhupada writes in the purport that because he was always thinking of Krishna, that he wasn't subjected to ignorance or sleep like an ordinary person because of this meditation. So the more we meditate on Krishna, and the more we act according to Krishna's instructions, the more we're freed from this material condition. And actually, there's one verse I put in my notes, which I didn't read. It's later in the teachings of Kapila. In that position of self-realization, by practice of knowledge and renunciation, devotional service, one sees everything in the right perspective. He becomes indifferent to material existence, and the material influence acts less powerfully upon him. So, in the beginning, we think all these thoughts in our mind to be part of ourselves or mine, But later we see, oh, it's just the modes of material nature affecting my mind, and it actually has nothing to do with me. I owe it nothing, all these things. That it's just material contamination, and I don't have to pay any attention to it. I can just do what my guru told me to, and remain transcendental. So I like that. That particular thing. It's sort of sometimes, we get the impression that it's all or nothing, But here, Lord Kapila is saying that, that the material influence acts less powerfully, basically, the more you're absorbed in devotional service. And the less you're absorbed in devotional service, the more powerfully it acts on you. And if you get tired of being influenced by it, then all you have to do is increase your devotional service and you don't have to worry about it anymore. So basically, as time goes on, we realize more and more what a disadvantaged position we are being controlled by the material nature, as Devahuti is realizing now and becoming more enthusiastic to ask about, so how do I actually transcend this, She starts out saying she's just tired of the disturbance created by the senses, right in the beginning of her questions. And she's getting more and more tired of it. And now she wants, so how do I get to this transcendental state? So we can end here. We got 3 minutes. Does anybody have any realizations of transcendence they'd like to share us? The time when they transcended the modes of material nature? By complete absorption in devotional service? Sometimes you become so absorbed in devotional service you forget about. Well, there's like 2.5 minutes. Oh yeah, forget about the time. No, I was singing in Leipzig, advertising the Leipzig Rathiacha, and there was this girl who looked like she was really into our chanting. So I asked one of the Mahajis to talk to her. And she said, I went into your kirtan tent at the Polish Woodstock. I was planning to go for just 1 hour, and I came out 5 hours later, And then I was on this bus going from the Chipi airport to the center of Paris, and there's this guy from Dublin, and he was saying, I went to some fair, and you guys had a booth there, and they were doing this chanting, and I thought like 40 minutes went by, but it was actually 2 hours, because sometimes we're on Harinam, and it's sort of like a tough day, and we're wondering when 7 o'clock is going to roll around. But all you really have to do is hear every holy name and chant every holy name, and by all the time will lapsed, and the time to go back to the temple and take prasad. So thank you for your time. His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Shri Radha Govindam Bhagavatam.